Well, hi again, folks. Well, I had so much interest in my other little fine gold sluice that I thought I'd show you how to build one of these very easily. It's designed to be built by those people who don't have a whole lot of tools or a whole lot of experience in building. All you need basically is two boards, a 1 by 8 and a 1 by 3, and a handsaw and maybe a drill, and a couple of other tools might be handy along the way. And all you need to do is cut the boards to length and screw them together. Well, the mat we're using for this is what they call a vortex mat. You can buy this up on eBay in all different lengths and sizes. This is going to be about an 8-inch sluice here we're building today. So I bought an 8-inch by 24-inch piece up on eBay for this. Well, we'll fire this thing up and let you see how it runs. This has just a little bit more turbulence than what I like in my sluices, but I think it'll work just fine. Anyway, this is running at a full 800 gallon per hour, which is more than I normally run through this. Usually 600 gallon per hour is more than enough for the coarser material, and usually about a 5 for the finer material. Well, my grandson got me interested in doing urban prospecting this past summer, and so we used this little sluice extensively to test it out and see how well it was going to work. So this is one of the runs with the coarse material that we screened out. This is all the -8 material that we've collected on this batch. Well, this is primarily -8 material that we have here. And so you can see that the larger gold kind of just hangs up on the little fingers of the mat. And it just kind of sits there. If you look down inside the pockets, you can see where the black sands and the finer gold gets caught. And so most of the gold will be caught within the first 3 to 4 inches of this mat, and that's where it'll stay. To do a clean out on this is quite easy. You just lift the bottom edge of the mat and slide it out. And as you can see here, most of the gold just sits within the top 3 to 4 inches. So first of all, I usually stick the end in with the gold and kind of shake it off to make sure all the gold gets in. Then you wrap it around itself and shake it up and down in the water pretty good. Flip it over and do another round on it. Yep, there it is, all nice and clean now. Ready to go for another round. You want to spray these mats down very well when you first put them in, and maybe take a little brush over them and scrub them down pretty good. This gets all the air bubbles out. I always like to do it in between runs as well, just to ensure that we keep the mat wet and there's no air bubbles that build up in it. Now we'll run the finer material. This is the -30 material that we got out of this batch, and I've reduced the water flow back to probably about 500 gallons per hour on this, and so that will prevent the mat from washing out. I have a new Miller table design that I've been working with this summer, and so I think I'll run the cons over it to see what we end up with. Typically I get about an ounce and a half to 2 ounces of cons from the mat, and so I usually run that over a Miller table to separate the gold. This is running at about 150 gallons per hour, because I'm suspecting that there's going to be some very fine gold in there and don't want to wash it out. Well, I'm really liking this new table design that I built this summer. It gives a little deeper water than I typically like on a Miller table, but as you can see, it works very well with the fine gold. This kind of sump design on it eliminates almost all the turbulence, so the flow that you get over the table is just very, very smooth, and I'm very happy with it. I'll probably do a video on how to build one of these too a little later on. Well, that's not looking too bad so far. I hadn't really planned on there being a whole lot of gold in here, but it looks like there's going to be more than what I expected. This is kind of a small-headed pin that I found, and we'll use this kind of as a reference point to give you kind of an idea of how small this gold is. I'm guessing that the larger stuff is maybe minus 30, maybe 50 mesh, and the smaller is probably around 100 mesh. So as you can see, that vortex mat does catch the fine gold as well quite easily. So yeah, it does a good job. For those who are interested in trying their hand at building one of these, following is some information I hope will be helpful in doing so. First of all, you'll need a baseboard. This is a 1x8 that I've cut. Then you will need a couple of sideboards, or side rails they call them, and these can be cut out of a piece of 1x3. The header board is made out of two pieces of 1x3 that I cut to the same width as the bottom board. Then I glued them together. So this is all the parts there are to building one of these. 4 parts, and that's about it. You'll need to decide on how wide you want your sluice to be and buy the corresponding size board. You can buy a 1x6 like this, which is actually 5.5 inches wide. Or you can buy a 1x8, which is actually 7.5 inches wide. Now this is the size board that I'm using for this tutorial here. Then for the header board and the side rails, you can buy a 1x3, and that will fix you up. So basically just need 2 boards. This is a 1x8 that you can buy from your Home Depot store. As you can see here, it's fairly inexpensive. You can also pick up a 1x3 while you're there, and as you can see, they're fairly inexpensive as well. If you wish to make the sideboards out of some lighter material, across the aisle from the larger boards is the finished boards, and you can buy some 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch boards there for fairly reasonable as well. You'll need a good waterproof glue, and I recommend this Type Bond Type 3, and it's a very good glue and will hold up well for you. Also, you'll need to buy some spar urethane varnish, and I recommend the Helmsman. It's what I use for all of my projects, and I've been very happy with it over the years. If you don't already have a saw, one of these Husky back saws is very handy to have and will work well for this project. Or you can buy it with a miter box combination like here, but the miter box unfortunately will be a little too narrow for what you need. You can make yourself a miter box like this one, like I did. You can use the 1x8 and the 1x3s to make it, and that will help you cut straighter and more even lines if you wish. Of course, you can always just kind of freehand it across there as well. Well, a few more tools that may be handy to have are an X-Acto knife or utility knife. You'll need one of these for cutting the mat, probably. Of course, a good tape measure comes in handy. And I usually use screws to put mine together. And so these brad point screws you can buy are very helpful for that. I use a 1/8 inch one for my screws. The brad tips are kind of handy because they have this sharp point on the end of them that helps hold it in place, and so the bit's not slipping around on you. Now, if you want to round over the sharp edges on things, then one of these can be quite handy. And of course, a good old square. I don't draw straight lines very well, so I need one of these. And I like these particular screws you can buy from Home Depot as well. They have a kind of a washer head on them there, which helps keep from splitting the wood out. And of course, your hand drill. A saw, either a back saw or you can use just an old hand saw like this one. And I recommend at least a homemade miter box. Helps you cut your cuts a little straighter and more accurately. So that may help. There are several ways to cut your mat. One is to put some painter's tape across there and mark it with your square, and then use the utility knife. Make about 4 or 5 cuts across there and cut it a little bit each time there, rather than try to do it at one time. And I think you'll find that's easier. Then you'll be able to cut your mat to the length that you need. Well, another way you can do it is to make a little jig kind of like this, if you want. And then lay your mat down on it, so you've got a little shelf to butt it up against. Then lay your baseboard down on top of it. Then you can go ahead and use your utility knife to cut it. So just a couple different ways to do it. Next, you want to cut your header board. You want to cut 2 pieces of your 1x3 and cut them to the same length as the width of your baseboard there. This will be your header board. And spread a little tight bond on there. And I usually like to use a brush to kind of spread it out evenly there. You can do that if you want, or however works best for you. Well, at this point, you've got your baseboard cut, and you've got your mat cut to fit it. You want it so it's nice, snug fit, even all the way around, so they're cut both exactly the same. You have your header board made for you now, and then you'll want to cut the side rails. Now, I usually cut these to where they're maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches longer than the sluice itself. And that's just a matter of preference. You can cut it flush if you want. No big deal. So basically, here's what your unit looks like now. For my water bar, I usually like to draw a line down the center of it. Then I mark it off in 1/2 inch increments along there. And then I take a 3/16 inch drill and drill a hole at each one of the intersections. Next, I take a tapered bit and drill these holes out to just about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. Now you can do this with just one bit if you want, but I usually do it in a 2-step. Now my personal preference is to drill a hole in the header board to run the water bar through. But in this case, we're going to try to cut down on the expense of buying a $10 drill, and we'll mount this to the header board with some of these PVC pipe clamps. Well, all the boards have got some rather sharp edges on them, so you may want to take your rasp and just kind of round them off a little bit so they aren't quite so sharp and you don't cut yourself on them. So now's a good time to do that. Well, another thing I like to do is just kind of cut the corners off so they're not quite so sharp and round them off. But that's just me. One thing I like to do too is glue about a 1/4 inch board across the bottom and have the top edge of it come up just about flush with the top of the mat. This will help hold the mat into place. These a 1/4 inch board, you can get one of those rulers from Home Depot and cut that to fit to go across there. That's just about the right width and thickness. Well, now's the time to mount the header board to the baseboard. I usually screw it in from the back, and that anchors the header board to the baseboard very well, and it pulls it up tight so there's less chance of leaks. After you get the header board mounted, then you can put the side rails on. I usually like to pre-drill the holes first before I put the screws in. And this keeps the screws from splitting the wood. Once you've got it all assembled and everything, make sure that everything fits right. Then I disassemble it again and give it a good sanding. After the sanding, it's time to put the spray varnish on. I like the Helmsman and in a spray can to boot because it's easier to put on, and I usually give it about 4 or 5 good coats on it. Well, after the varnish dries, then you can reassemble everything and install the mat, and you're good to go. Your sluice is finished and ready to run dirt. I hope that this has been beneficial for those of you who are interested in building one of these. I've been using this one all summer long, and it's certainly been a good little sluice for me. So enjoy, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Bye now.